What is the deal with climate change? I think a lot of people are wondering because the truth is, the most of us don't even know. So to get a better understanding on what is the truth behind climate change, with me today is the one and only Professor Richard Lindzen.
No, I mean, you're asking a good question. And the first thing that I think got mentioned that's important is climate refers to things longer than the weather forecast. It's pretty arbitrary, but they use 30 years. So when somebody who is 20 years old says, this must be climate change, I haven't seen this in my lifetime, ignore it, of course. They're not old enough. They'd have to be at least 40 to remember 30 years difference, and most people don't think that way. So the word climate gets thrown around, which is the reason why people who want to promote the policies say extreme weather. Now you can say, I saw extreme weather. But again, if you're not old enough, you don't realize extreme weather is occurring always, someplace. In other words, today, didn't rain today, I don't think. I've been indoors most of the time. The temperature is a little below average for this time of year. But someplace on Earth, you're getting very heavy rain. Someplace on Earth, there's been a drought. In some place, there's something else. In some place, there's probably for this day a record cold and a record heat. And so in the world of social media, somebody takes a picture and posts it and says, look, what's happening? And somebody is saying, I haven't seen anything like that. That's quite remarkable. And so you get people excited and wound up and stupid, because the policies have nothing to do with what you've seen. You're just being told, oh, CO2 caused that. And you have to be fairly young and fairly stupid to think that's never been seen before.
Yeah, because actually you're touching upon an interesting perspective. What I wanted to ask you, I think what we hear a lot is the narrative of that we human beings are, producing green gas, we're producing dioxide that is actually causing now global warming. And to make it short, because of that, the world is coming to the end. If we don't change our behavior, that's it. That's the end of the world. We're all going to die. So is this
severe projection?
Yeah, but is this true? And if it is, then based on what is it true? Which scientific proof is it to back this? Of course.
Okay. If somebody is telling you you have 10 years to live, wouldn't you want to check?
Of course I would. That's a rhetoric question. Of course I would.
But do you?
Do I check?
Yeah. In other words, they've told you something that sounds crazy. Do you go to the references and say, is anyone really predicting this? And you'd quickly discover that the UN's IPCC never predicted it. So you say, what about the American National Assessment? Well, they didn't predict it. Where the heck did it come from? And you now know that there is somebody who is going to lie to you to scare you. At that point, forget anything they ever say.
Yes, but I'm going to be critical. What is often said is that, it's the common consensus between researchers. You're also a researcher.
Check. That's what I keep telling you. Do your homework. It's true at American universities now, if you don't do your homework, you still get a B. We're discouraging people from doing homework, even in the universities. But sometimes you have to. You can't just say, have you ever heard the name Joseph Goebbels?
Of course I have,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. What was the basis of saying that if you tell a big enough lie and repeat it often enough, it becomes the truth? Because that's what's happening. Why is that?
To control people.
No, no. Why does it work?
Because if you repeat it often enough, people start to believe it.
Why, if it's something that is life changing for you, that is telling you, why bother having children? You're all going to be dead in 10 years. Why wouldn't you check that? Go to the references, look at it. Does anyone actually say this? This is what puzzles me. Why not?
Also, I listened to a couple of your podcasts and interview,
Okay.
and there were some interesting statements. First of all, what you said is, after 60 plus years of studying the atmosphere, I concluded that models fail to produce the existential threat politicians claim. You also said in an interview that the climate warriors exploit your fear. So what you're saying is that they're creating this fear, but could you elaborate on that?
Well, you know, it's hard to elaborate because the question I have is, why would people want you to do things that are destructive to yourself and to the society? And the answer you come up with is they must hate the society. And nobody wants to believe there are people going around who hate the society and will derive satisfaction from its destruction. And I don't want to believe that. But I can't think of anything else because these policies don't help anyone, they just hurt. Admittedly, somebody will benefit. So if President Biden spends $9 trillion on energy, somebody gets those $9 trillion and they're happy. But in the meantime, you've lost your industry. People are out of work. People have no dignity that you need from work. This is destructive.
Yes, because you're a scientist, so I think you're also very familiar with a lot of models. And take, for example, Al Gore, you also referred to him in your keynote speech. They always say, oh, but the models predict. That's always what
And
they're
they
saying.
don't,
Yeah, because this is what I wanted to know. Why would you say that they're unreliable?
because we don't know how to model. For instance, water vapor and clouds are the main greenhouse factors. Do you think they stay constant? You look at the tropics, the amount of cloudiness is varying all the time. The coverage is varying. Where it is, where they are, they're moving. Water vapor is not uniform. There are regions that are saturated and regions that are perfectly dry. The areas are moving. You don't just get a feedback from one. You have to consider the area changing and so on. You look at the models and compare them with observations of clouds. Not a single model gets the distribution correct. So you're incapable of calculating this. We have a paper just a few months ago comparing the observations to the models. And the models get too much greenhouse warming. They also get a polar amplification that isn't observed in the data. That's a technical thing. In a normal world, you do that and you realize something is wrong. This is not a normal world. People have a commitment to this answer, and even if it fails, even if the models fail, by now, we've had model predictions for 30 years, 35 years. Most of the predictions have failed already. This should be in normative science a sign you're doing something wrong. It isn't. Say, oh, we'll fix it. We'll keep it going another 10 years. Or didn't happen last year, but maybe next year. It has a religious component. You have these religious sects who believe that Revelations, the end of the world will come, the wars of Gog and Magog, and so on. and they're predicted to come on, September 22nd, 20 something, and they don't come. And so the usual conclusion, they're going to come later. We miscalculated. And we're doing that with climate.
Yeah, because to what extent do you think that the economic or political interests influence the scientific discussion on climate change?
Will you repeat that? The political and what?
Economic.
What are the economic values of destroying industry?
Well, if one loses, the other one gains, no?
Who gains and who loses? I mean, if Germany destroys its automobile industry, who gains and who loses? Okay, answer.
I'm not going to answer that on camera. I think people know who's going to win.
Okay. Who loses?
The people.
Where?
Well, in Germany, for example, they don't even have nuclear energy anymore. They shut off all the nuclear plants. You can see it back in the energy prices.
Why would people do that?
That's what I ask you. Yeah.
I'm not a psychiatrist. Usually you put people away who want to do that. I mean, I can do certain calculations, and we've done this over the years, and the models are wrong. The data doesn't show there's a problem. You go through it, but you have people who have entered the field to show that there's a problem, and they will object. They'll say, this is discredited. That's a funny issue, by the way. You will occasionally notice papers come out, and they're referred to as discredited.
Yeah. You said that one of your papers was discredited as
A
well.
lot of them. But it's a funny word because it's not a statement they're wrong. It's a statement, don't pay attention to it, which is very weird. We never had that in science before.
No, and last but not least, this is the last question. You have over 60 years already of experience as a researcher. You've written over 2,000 papers. Oh, sorry, 200. But still,
Only in the medical profession you get 2,000.
200 is what I wanted to say. What is the biggest lesson that you learned and that you want to share with our voters at home or with our viewers at home?
What is the biggest lesson I've learned?
What's the biggest knowledge, like the biggest finding that you found out of those researches?
You have to understand, most of us look at relatively small things. So, at the beginning of my career, there was a question. The wind above the equator, about 15 to 25 kilometers, blows from east to west for 1 year, turns around, goes the other way for the other year, and keeps turning around with an average period of 26 months. And this is stronger than the annual cycle, stronger than the semi-annual. Just does this funny dance. And so one of the early things that I managed was to figure out how that happened. And that was sort of fun. The field is full of nice questions, that are quite distinct from predicting the weather 100 years in advance. And to be honest, if you don't understand today's, what's the good of your understanding 100 years from now? So, you take a bunch of people, they haven't studied the physics, they don't know the theory, they take someone's model and run it. That's much simpler than trying to understand it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we saw it as well today in Parliament. I just came back. They had candidates for the European Commission, and they said we have to have a left person being in charge because if it will be someone from the far right, we will not meet the climate standards and the end of the world is coming near. But here we have someone to bring the contrary.